This is Old School Queenies Couples Podcast. Oh yeah. And I'm starting, this is a new segment on my podcast. I've been doing poor people's news bulletin, so I'm gonna just officially, I've been testing it, the poor people's news. So now, here I'm gonna make it a segment of my podcast. It's gonna be called Poor People's News. Flashback on Poor People's News. Let's do a flashback on the news of the week, or the news of the last month, or the past month, or the past week, or the past day, or the past. This is our Poor People's News. That is still relevant. I'm only picking out clips that is still relevant, that you may have missed, that you may have a need to know. You will have a need to know that what you have missed. Poor People's News is very important, and is educated, and it help you plan for the future. So yeah, we need our Poor People's News. I mean, you need to hear most of the clips that I've captured. Because, like I say, it will help you in your planning, because the world is changing all the time. You need to know which way to go, how to plan for your kids' future. So take a listen, flashback on my Poor People's News.
Since the U.S. media won't show this video, I'm going to show it. This is Venezuela, ladies and gentlemen, and the people are demanding that the United States let their president out of U.S. custody. CNN, CBS, ABC, Fox News, none of them are going to show this, ladies and gentlemen. They're not going to show this. Millions of Venezuelans have taken the streets, and they want their president back in office. Now, what Trump got to say about this?
Doing very well with regard to Iran. Again, they want to make a deal. They're decimated. They're having a hard time figuring out who their leader is. They don't know who their leader is, because their leader is gone. Their former leader, Khomeini. But we'll see. If we left right now, it would take them 20 years to rebuild. But we're not leaving right now. We're going to do it so nobody has to go back in 2 years or 5 years. They told me about the concept of the deal. They're going to give me the exact wording now, yeah. Well, it's a very friendly blockade. Nobody's even challenging it. Nobody at all is challenging it. Just so you understand, many presidents have been involved in things that are very big. They never had to go through anything with respect to Congress. They considered it to be totally unconstitutional. And the Democrats in Congress that pushed this, and probably a couple of Republicans, they're hurting our negotiating ability, which is infinite right now. And they shouldn't be doing it. It's never happened before. No other president's done it. And I'm not going to be the first.
All right. Let's hear some more international news. The news perspective on this Iran war. You heard that Venezuelans, they want their president back. So let's hear some more international news on where we stand in this war. All right, let's hear this.
America, the so-called leader of the free world, just got locked out of Europe's airspace. France said no, Italy said no, Spain said no, Switzerland said no. In the span of 48 hours, 4 major Western nations looked at the United States of America and said, "We don't want any part of what you're doing. You're on your own, Donald." Let that satisfaction sink in for a second. The country that built NATO, the country that has projected military power across the globe for 7 decades, just got told by its own allies that it can't fly its planes over their countries. That is not a minor diplomatic spat. That is not a little disagreement between friends. That is the sound of the post-World War II international order cracking in half right in front of our eyes. And I need you to understand something before we go any further here. This didn't happen because these countries suddenly hate America. This didn't happen because the French woke up one morning and decided they wanted to pick a fight. This happened because Donald Trump, the man sitting in the Oval Office, has spent his time in power systematically destroying every single relationship the United States has built over generations. He threatened NATO. He attacked allies. He cozied up to dictators. He launched a war in Iran without consulting anyone. And now he's shocked that nobody wants to help him. I mean, how dumb do you have to be? Look, let's walk through this piece by piece, because the details here are staggering when you actually lay them all out on the table. So here's what happened. France and Italy officially joined Spain and Switzerland in denying the United States any military support or airspace for Trump's war in Iran. And it's not just the US that got shut out. Israel wanted to use French airspace to transport American weapons that were going to be used in the Iran conflict. And France said, absolutely not. France flat out refused. And Italy? Italy told the United States that if they want to use Italian military infrastructure for purposes outside of existing agreements, they need special permission. And guess what? Trump's Iran war doesn't fall under any existing agreement. So the answer from Italy was, no, you don't get to use our country as a pit stop for your unauthorized military adventure. Now think about that for a second. These are NATO allies. These are countries that have stood shoulder to shoulder with the United States through the Cold War, through the Balkans, through Afghanistan, through countless military operations over decades. And in the span of a few months, Donald Trump has managed to alienate them so completely, so thoroughly, that they won't even let American planes fly over their territory. That's not just a policy disagreement, that's a full-blown divorce. And what was Trump's response to all of this? Did he reflect? Did he pause and think, maybe I should have talked to my allies before launching a major military operation in the Middle East? No, of course not. This is Donald Trump we're talking about. He went on the attack. He accused France of blocking military equipment. He attacked France and the United Kingdom throughout the day. He basically threw a tantrum like a child who got told he can't have dessert and then flipped the table over. And then, and this is the part that should make every American sit up straight in their chair, Trump said the United States should consider withdrawing from NATO. Let me say that again so it really lands. The President of the United States suggested that America should pull out of the military alliance that has been the backbone of Western security since 1949. An alliance that was specifically created to prevent the kind of catastrophic global conflicts that killed tens of millions of people in the first half of the 20th century. Trump wants to throw that in the garbage because France wouldn't let his planes fly over their country for a war he started without asking anyone. And it wasn't just Trump. Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, went on Fox News and echoed the exact same thing. And I want to break down what Rubio said because the framing he used is so dishonest, so manipulative that it deserves to be pulled apart word by word. Rubio said, and I'm paraphrasing the substance here, that he used to be one of the strongest defenders of NATO in the Senate because he saw value in it. He said NATO wasn't just about defending Europe, it was about having military bases in Europe that allowed the US to project power around the world. But now, he said, if NATO means we can't use those bases when we need them, then what's the point? Then it's a one-way street. Then we're just there to defend Europe, but when we need help, they say no. Here's the reality of what Rubio just did there. He reframed the entire situation to make it sound like America is the victim, like America has been this generous benefactor, just giving and giving and giving to ungrateful Europeans who won't return the favor. But that is a complete distortion of what's actually happening. The reason these countries are refusing to cooperate isn't because they don't value the alliance. It's because Donald Trump launched an unlawful war, a war that none of these countries were consulted about, a war that none of them agreed to, a war that violates international norms. And then he showed up at their door demanding they participate. That's not how alliances work. That's not how partnerships work. You don't ignore your partners, go rogue, start a fire, and then get mad when they won't help you put it out. And let's talk about what Rubio said regarding the Strait of Hormuz, because this was equally disturbing. Rubio basically said, the Strait of Hormuz is international waters, and what Iran is doing there is illegal under maritime law. But then he said, It's not really America's problem. The US doesn't get much energy through the strait. It's Europe's problem. It's Asia's problem. Let them deal with it. The United States of America, the so-called leader of the free world, just got locked out of Europe's airspace.
After sparring with German Chancellor Friedrich Merz,
Da wird eine ganze Nation gedemütigt.
who said on Monday the Iranians were humiliating the U.S. in talks to end the 2-month-old war. A senior Pentagon official, speaking on condition of anonymity, said recent German rhetoric had been, quote, inappropriate and unhelpful. The official said the drawdown would bring numbers back to roughly pre-2022 levels, before President Joe Biden's buildup following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. They said a brigade combat team now in Germany will leave, and a long-range fires battalion that had been set to deploy there later this year would now no longer do so. Trump has singled out Germany even as he has harshly criticized other NATO allies for not sending their navies to help open the Strait of Hormuz during the Iran conflict. Germany hosts around 35,000 U.S. troops, the largest American military presence in Europe.
Trump is getting humiliated on the world stage, and his own Treasury Secretary just confirmed it. Scott Bessent admitted what Trump will never say out loud, that this entire Iran disaster is falling apart, and the Trump regime has zero leverage, zero allies, and zero plan except to hand money to the same country they just attacked. Trump loves talking about leverage. You hear it all the time when he's screaming about allies supposedly ripping us off. Never enemies, mind you, just our allies. But when Trump actually gets into a conflict, when things get real, he folds every single time. And right now, Americans are watching gas prices spike to levels we haven't seen in years, while 13 service members have died in a war nobody can explain the purpose of. Here's what went down. Play this clip. Clip 1, 00 to 313. Trump told his advisors Iran wouldn't close the Strait of Hormuz. Iran closed it. Trump said ship captains should show some guts and sail through. Iran attacked them. Trump said the Navy would escort ships. The Navy said that's a kill box. We're not doing that. Trump said allies would help. No allies showed up. Then Trump said we don't need allies anyway. We can do it ourselves. Except he can't. This is the man who ran around the country screaming about how he's the master negotiator, the deal maker, the guy with all the leverage. And when it comes to an actual crisis he created, he's got nothing. Iran called his bluff. Our own military said no to his plan. And every single ally told him to kick rocks. And the when will you learn, watch what they do, not what they say line, that applies to Trump himself. He announces coalitions that don't exist. He promises Navy escorts that won't happen. He insults the allies he needs, then pretends he doesn't need them, then says they're coming to help anyway. It's incoherent. Meanwhile, Americans are paying more at the pump every single day because Trump started a war he didn't think through, didn't plan for, and now can't figure out how to manage. But sure, Donald, you've got all the leverage. Before we get into this story, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the latest breaking news and political updates. We're pushing hard toward 100,000 subscribers, and every subscription helps. But wait, there's more. While Trump is flailing around trying to secure the Strait of Hormuz with zero help, guess who's making out like bandits? Here's what else is happening. Oh, great. Just great. Russia is getting rich. Oil prices are skyrocketing, filling up Putin's war chest while he's in the middle of his disastrous Ukraine invasion. And on top of that, Russia is actively helping Iran kill American service members. They've got a strategic partnership, according to Trump's own UN ambassador. Iran confirmed they've got Russia's military cooperation. So, Trump starts a war with Iran, gas prices spike, Russia profits, and Russia helps Iran target and kill U.S. troops. If you were trying to design the perfect scenario to benefit Vladimir Putin and screw over American interests.
All right, I'm continuing with international news. You heard about the Trump war. You got your update on the Iran war and what's going on there. So let's continue with more international news clips that I captured that we need to hear. It's a little education, little for us, and a little history. We need to hear more world news.
Wenn
Beneath a small town in Poland, geologists discover a massive salt deposit.
They discovered 2 chambers, now called the Crystal Caves.
But how did an industrial mine become a place of healing?
The purpose of a recently declassified British bunker is investigated.
Site 3, which was codenamed Burlington, was carved into spring quarry.
Burlington was intended as a secure refuge for ministers and key staff. Did Burlington serve some other, deeper strategic purpose?
In Egypt, archaeologists discover a subterranean settlement believed to be thousands of years old.
Beneath the Hellenistic layers, they found a 3,400-year-old New Kingdom settlement. So why did a New Kingdom settlement rise here, on a rocky ridge, far from the Nile?
Below the busy streets of the world's cities exists a hidden realm of wonder. Sprawling ancient complexes, mysterious tombs, top-secret military bases, strange structures, and lost artifacts buried beneath our feet and long forgotten until now. Underground marvels are exposed to reveal what lies hidden beneath the cities. Around 8 miles southeast of Krakow, Poland, lies Wieliczka, a town shaped by historical upheaval and geological riches.
Wieliczka sits atop the Miocene salt formation of the Carpathian Foredeep, a vast sedimentary basin stretching over 800 miles from Vienna to Romania. It formed as the Carpathian Mountains advanced millions of years ago and holds valuable reserves of salt, oil, and gas.
Beginning in the 13th century, Wieliczka's salt deposits became central to Poland's economy, accompanied by an agricultural boom that connected the region to European trade routes. This prosperity brought settlers from neighboring areas, and by the mid-1500s, Poland had become Europe's largest state.
But between 1772 and 1918, Poland disappeared entirely from the map, partitioned by Russia, Prussia, and Austria. After it was restored in 1918, Poland was devastated by the 2 world wars, and its once strong Jewish community was nearly annihilated in the Holocaust.
At the end of the 19th century, geological surveys lead miners to uncover a vast, hidden crystalline world buried deep beneath the earth.
They discovered 2 chambers, now called the Crystal Caves. The lower Crystal Cave spans about 25,000 cubic feet, and the upper Crystal Cave is even bigger, about 35,000 cubic feet. Both chambers have these huge crystals in them. They're called euhedral halite crystals. They're sharp, they're distinct, they have these flat faces, and it's believed that they formed a long time ago in an ancient underground lake about 1,500 feet deep.
The Crystal Caves represent just one extraordinary feature of Wieliczka Salt Mine, Poland's oldest continuously operating industrial site. With 9 levels descending nearly 1,100 feet, the mine encompasses over 2,000 interconnected chambers. In total, Wieliczka's excavations form an immense subterranean void of nearly 265 million cubic feet.
By the 16th century, Wieliczka had become one of Europe's largest industrial salt operations, providing nearly a third of the Polish crown's total revenue. And over the 7 centuries it was in use, Wieliczka yielded almost 50 million tons of salt.
Deep within Wieliczka's extensive subterranean labyrinth lies its most remarkable architectural achievement.
The Chapel of St. Kinga lies about 330 feet underground. Every detail in the 4-story structure, from the altar and the relief of Leonardo's Last Supper to chandeliers made of pure salt crystals, was carved directly from rock salt. So how did this working mine transform into this space of spiritual reverence?
One explanation traces this transformation to the medieval legend of Princess Kinga, born in 1224 into Hungary's Arpad dynasty. She was renowned for her piety and famously requested salt rather than precious metals as her dowry upon marrying Poland's Prince Bolesław V.
According to tradition, Princess Kinga dropped her engagement ring into a Hungarian salt mine, and later, miners in Poland found the same ring inside their first block of salt near Wawel Hill Castle. Seen as a divine sign, this legend linked Kinga to Poland's salt wealth and wove her legacy into the nation's economic and spiritual prosperity.
Did it really happen? Maybe, but it doesn't really matter, because this story profoundly shaped local belief. Starting in 1896, two brothers spent nearly 3 decades expanding an 18th century chamber into what became St. Kinga's Chapel, ultimately removing 20,000 tons of salt. And that chapel reached its final form in 1963. That took almost 70 years to do.
16 miles east in Bochnia, another St. Kinga chapel offers a smaller but equally reverent reflection of this legend.
Bochnia's St. Kinga Chapel lies nearly 700 feet underground, encompassing around 2,800 square feet. The original chamber dates to 1747, though its current form was finalized in the early 20th century. The site shows the profound spiritual dedication shared across these Polish mines.
But Wieliczka's devotional artistry extended further. Its intricate bas-reliefs and salt statues of the Virgin Mary, St. Anthony of Padua, and St. John Paul II laid the foundation for a tradition of sacred art hidden below ground.
Beyond chapels, miners transformed entire chambers into cultural landmarks, dedicating them to Polish saints, national heroes, and playful folk figures like mining gnomes. These carvings turned practical spaces into vivid expressions of identity and devotion, preserving a living record within the mine.
Around 40 chapels were constructed at Wieliczka, offering miners more than just places to worship. These were sanctuaries in a world of uncertainty. But listen, faith explains the drive to create these sacred spaces, but faith does not explain why the roof doesn't cave in. So, how did those people overcome the mine's inherent geological instability?
Flooding at Wieliczka is a constant concern, leading some to wonder how the site's delicate underground structures have survived over the decades.
Salt dissolves easily, creating an ongoing threat below ground. In 2010 alone, engineers at Wieliczka tracked over 150 leaks and severe floods, bringing hundreds of liters per minute into the spaces below. But St. Kinga's Chapel, along with the mine's other chapels and structures, have endured, so how is such stability possible?
Now, the surrounding rock has low permeability, so it's hard for water to get in. But if water does get in, it's very bad. Rock salt is extremely soluble, so any intrusion is very dangerous. Since 1868, major floods have repeatedly threatened that mine's stability. It is a constant risk.
Recent events in Romania, about 330 miles southeast of Wieliczka, demonstrate the catastrophic consequences when salt encounters uncontrolled flooding.
In 2025, heavy rainfall in Harghita County triggered the worst flooding there in 30 years, threatening the historic Pride salt mine. That's one of Europe's largest salt reserves. Water from one overflowing stream began dissolving underground salt layers as deep as 400 feet, creating serious risks for long-term stability.
Despite emergency dams and high-capacity pumps, water flow surged to levels 100 times higher than normal. Parts of the mine floor caved in, and 45 nearby households had to be evacuated due to risk of collapse. The flooding forced a full shutdown, underscoring just how vulnerable these formations are when water barriers fail.
Wieliczka's persistence hinges on constant engineering efforts. Powerful pumping systems to keep the water out, deep protective air spaces constantly drained to keep it dry, and stainless steel anchors.
Its endurance reflects centuries of careful design and continuous monitoring. These engineering achievements also raise new questions about how far underground spaces can be pushed and what other unexpected uses they might support.
In the 19th century, doctors noticed something unexpected about Wieliczka's miners.
In 1843, a Polish physician noticed that Wieliczka's salt miners rarely suffered from respiratory diseases common in other mines. Decades later, a German doctor observed similar benefits in patients sheltering in salt caves during World War II. These findings spread across Eastern Europe, and by 1964, Velitska opened its first official sanatorium nearly 700 feet underground. But how did an industrial mine become a place of healing?
On the 5th level, where the 500-bed sanatorium was built, temperatures average 68 to 71 degrees Fahrenheit. The air is dense with fine salt dust, almost entirely sodium chloride. Half of these particles are smaller than 5 microns, creating a delicate, breathable mist.
Breathing this salt-rich air has been shown to have respiratory benefits. Its therapeutic power comes from a precise combination of stable temperature, high humidity, clean air, and microscopic salt aerosols. Together, these conditions offer a compelling model, one that could reshape how we think about underground space and its healing potential.
Nearly 375 miles northeast of Vilitska is Belarus. The Salihorsk mine is already testing that idea.
Soligorsk was once a major center for potash and salt extraction, but since the early 1990s, it has operated as the National Speleotherapy Clinic. Every year, around 4,000 patients descend nearly 1,400 feet underground to breathe salt-rich air believed to relieve asthma, bronchitis, and allergy symptoms.
At Velitska in 2021, specialized COVID-19 recovery programs were launched. Patients performed breathing exercises around 445 feet underground in the vessel lake chamber. Afterwards, they reported major improvements in breathing, energy, and overall well-being.
This transformation reflects a broader shift in perspective, from viewing these not as hazardous relics, but as spaces for cultural and therapeutic renewal. It also invites us to ask what other possibilities might lie hidden in these once purely functional spaces.
Since 1945, over 45 million people have visited Vilitska, a testament to the site's journey from industrial powerhouse to UNESCO landmark, and showcasing centuries of reinvention and resilience beneath the ground.
Well, all right. Y'all hear this little bit about Poland? These underground, we have underground, we have mines here in America, but Poland, if you want to take a trip to Poland, you can try to go down and sit in the mine and breathe the salt to heal your bodies. I like that. So you might want to put that on your next trip, next getaway. I'm a travel agent, so, I can try to arrange for a trip or a getaway to Poland. Yeah. See the salt mines. All right, let's continue with Turkmenistan news. I got a little news, a clip about Turkmenistan, what's happening over there. More world news for us poor people. Let's go.
One of the first things that strikes you about the capital city, Ashgabat, is the sheer scale of it. Buildings like this stretch out for miles and miles around. Now, this is a country that's been isolated for the best part of 30 years, so you may ask how it can afford all this. And the secret is gas. Turkmenistan has the 4th largest natural gas reserves in the world. Most of its exports go to China, and that is how they've underwritten all of this building. In the years after independence from the Soviet Union in 1991, Turkmenistan began to close in on itself. It adopted one of the strictest visa regimes in the world. Officials say its tricky geography means it needs to protect itself from Islamist militants and drug smuggling from Afghanistan. And under President Sapar Murat Niyazov, who ruled until 2006, an elaborate cult of personality flourished.
Ashgabat is called the White City, and it's very easy to tell why. For miles and miles around, all of the buildings are clad in this incredible white marble. All of the cars here are white as well.
But in 2022, President Serdar Berdimuhamedov took over from his father, Gurbanguly. And since then, there have been signs of a loosening grip.
One thing that Ashgabat has no shortage of at all is luxury hotels. This is our hotel, the Sport Hotel. Up there's another one, the Olympic, and down there's probably half a dozen more. Now, some of them are frankly quite empty, but the Sport has actually been quite busy while we've been here. This is a country with very limited access to the internet, but here, in the hotels, you get free, uncensored internet, and that's a big deal here.
Many social media sites are still officially blocked in the country, but many are using VPNs to get around that. The authorities say it's to stop militant Islamist ideas spreading online. We visited a local breakdancing class where children were practicing with their coach.
Around the side, we've got some of their friends filming on Facebook and TikTok and Instagram. And really, I think what this shows us is that even here, in a country that was this traditionally isolated and cut off, you still have kids, increasingly, this younger generation, living a life that would be very recognizable to their peers in other countries.
Вот именно мы хотим, чтобы наши ребята, наши туркмены тоже участвовали именно, например, в Азии чемпионатах, в мировых чемпионатах. И вот в дальнейшем, иншаллах, все будет этот в Олимпиадах, чтобы наши туркмены тоже выступали. Это вообще было бы шикарно, классно было бы.
With a look at some of the ways culture is changing, we set out to get a sense of Turkmenistan's history.
We've come out here a few miles from Ashgabat to the Sayyid Jamaluddin Mosque. Now, as you can see, it was once a really beautiful sort of Persian-style mosque, but in 1948 it was destroyed in an earthquake. But this is still a very important place for Turkmen. People come out here, they pray. So this is a place, I think, really speaks to the Turkmen people's connection with their past, both pre-independence and pre-communism.
And back in the capital, links to Turkmenistan's heritage are never far away.
One of the centerpieces of Turkmen culture is rugs. They're a mix of silk and of wool, and each of them carries these ornaments, which are the logos, essentially, of one of the 22 tribes of the Turkmen. So this tribe, you can see these boats, these boat ornaments, they're associated with a tribe from the sea coast of the Caspian.
Очень тонкая работа, очень трудно его делать, но наши туркменские ткачицы, девочки, очень хорошо умеют это делать.
Это женская работа?
Это да, ручная. Это у нас вот ручная, вот это со времен, сколько уже поколен веков нам передается от этого.
At the same time, Ashgabat is also experiencing a growth of modern private businesses.
We're here at the offices of Wabroom, which is a Turkmenistan internet startup. It's sort of like an e-commerce company, similar to Amazon in the US or to Alibaba in China. And what's interesting here is that this is a country with relatively low internet usage and some restrictions on internet use, but even so, you can see a company just like any other in the world here, and a real sign that the economy and the society as well is modernizing and changing with time.
We're an IT company and giving opportunity to local business to sell online. The main barrier is habits of our customers. You see, traditionally Turkmen people got used to go to bazaars, talk with the seller, negotiate for the price. They want to touch the product before buying. We have free return services. Our clients can try on the clothes. Courier is waiting at the door.
Turkmenistan says it wants to simplify visa rules, join the World Trade Organization, and diversify its economy. And the new president has strengthened diplomatic ties by traveling abroad more than his predecessors did.
This is my wall of my success.
Travel agent and social media influencer Enerjan Velmuradova uses Instagram and TikTok to promote her business. She sends middle-class Turkmen on holiday to Europe and Southeast Asia.
К счастью, иностранцев также приезжает все больше с каждым годом.
Show me one country that USAID was in and education improved. Show me what country where USAID was in and healthcare improved. The end result, they mean no good. They can turn around and give us an inventory and say, as long as you have been in Africa, show us your success rate. You claim you are helping governments with education and healthcare. Show us your success rate. Africa has been the provider. If you look at Europe, Europe cannot survive without Africa. One situation that people don't realize, post-World War, when the US came up with the Marshall Plan, what they don't tell you is that the contribution through exploitation of African minerals was actually the biggest funder of the European Recovery Plan, ERP, aka the Marshall Plan. Let's be realistic here. Let's not talk about peanuts. Africa does not need the aid. What we need is for those who are exploiting Africa to stop. Africa has everything it needs. If Africa could have contributed as much as it did to the recovery of Europe post-World War II, why wasn't Africa equally developed? United Nations, it took 4 weeks to create the United Nations. Why? In order to help the recovery of Europe. The World Bank, the IMF, it took 3 weeks to create them after the Second World War in order to aid in the recovery of Europe from its own self-implosion and destruction. So no. These institutions were not created to benefit the developing world. To the contrary, they were built to steal from the developing world. Their success is based on the failures of the developing nations where they have been stealing from.
All right, y'all heard the lady. She said you've been stealing. You know, America and, you know, all these European countries come to Africa to steal. So we're going to get some African news later. But right now, let me get you one more piece of world news, and then let's get some business on our economy, business news with our economy. That'll be next. And where we stand with our business and our economy. Let's go.
Because of the interest in China, just to my surprise, but to my happiness. And this last summer, we sent more Harvard students to China than we have in memory, even before COVID. Somewhere between 300 and 400 Harvard students went to China. We have a large internship program with Chinese companies and NGOs. We started a new summer school taught by Harvard faculty in Shanghai with Fudan University. We had maybe 180 Harvard undergraduates go to China to teach in high schools in China. We have a new language program in Taipei. We are expanding significantly what we're doing in China because we believe that for the long-term future of our own university, that this is really important. And the students, there are many more applicants for any of these positions by the students than we have places.
Great, I'm really happy to hear that. That's really encouraging. And shall I add, you don't have to go to Harvard to come to China. You don't have to go to university to come to China either. You can just hop on a plane, make a transit. The visa is much simpler nowadays. So thank you so much, Professor William Kirby. I won't hold you longer. It's been a great pleasure.
It's been my great pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
With what looks like the start of World War III, would you like to know who's actually running the show, who's actually pulling the strings? Come on, let me show you. So that you can understand what's actually going on in this world. It starts with a fourth dimensional vampiric energy for outside this realm that is communicating with the black nobility. The black nobility, these are the 10 families that sit on the Jesuit Council. The Jesuit Council is headed by Pepe Orsini, and the White Pope and the Black Pope. The three-city state. City of London controls us financially. Vatican City controls us religiously. District of Columbia controls us militarily. These are the 13 front families for the black nobility, the ones we've heard of, the Rothschilds, the Kennedys, the Merovingians, the Onassis. Next come the secret societies, any secret societies that you can think of. After that is the consolidation of the financial assets, BlackRock, China Construction Bank, and Vanguard. After all of this come the heads of state. These people do nothing without being told what to do. This is just a show for the sheeple. Next come the programmers of this world, mainstream news, Hollywood, and the music industry. Finally, the distractions, drugs and alcohol, major league sports, and porn. Get yours today. The link is in the bio, so you understand what and how this war is controlling you. With what
everything that Donald Trump is doing, he's doing because he has no choice but to do. If Donald Trump goes against the Zionist agenda, he will go to jail for the rest of his life for being complicit in the Jeffrey Epstein scandal. People are saying Donald Trump said no new wars. Donald Trump said, why are we fighting other people's battles? If the war isn't important for America, why are we getting in it? But now you see him, he's completely contradicting himself. You just bombed Nigeria, you bombed and invaded Venezuela, kidnapped the president. You sending threats to Iran that you're going to bomb them on behalf of the Zionists in Israel. Why is Donald Trump dancing to a different drum than the one he played when he campaigned for presidency of the United States the second term? because he didn't know the Zionists had a blackmail card.
Zionists.
Donald Trump has to do exactly what they tell him to do, or he will go to jail for the rest of his life. Not because he participated necessarily, but because he had knowledge of it and did nothing about it. There's a viral video of Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel. I think they're at the White House, and Donald Trump pulls his chair out, and then he sits down and he pushes his chair, and he was basically being subservient to Netanyahu. You've never seen Donald Trump as arrogant and narcissistic as he is. You've never seen him be subservient to any man. That's the first time I've seen Donald Trump be subservient in his life. Why is he bowing down to Netanyahu? Because they got the blackmail card, Epstein Island.
Oh, y'all heard that.
We don't even realize we've been programmed to see each other as enemies. The real war was never us, it was what was done to us. They taught us to compete for survival instead of building together. Now we fight each other while everything around us gets taken. We celebrate each other's downfall like it's entertainment. That's not natural, that's conditioning. A divided people is the easiest to control. So they made sure we never trust each other. They removed unity and replaced it with ego and pride. Now nobody wants peace, everybody wants to win. We react off pain, not truth, and it turns into violence. Unhealed wounds don't just disappear, they spread. We're killing reflections of ourselves and calling it normal. That's how deep the disconnect really goes. Stop scrolling, click the...
All right, let's continue with some business news. Yep, let's continue.
To U.S. jobs data and corporate earnings. Here's what you need to watch in business and finance in the week ahead. Oil prices briefly topped $120 a barrel this week to hit their highest level since 2022, as the war with Iran enters a third month. While the U.S. and Iran face pressure to end a conflict that has shut the Strait of Hormuz, the world watches anxiously as the biggest ever disruption to energy supplies unfolds. For each week the strait is closed, keeping oil elevated, the greater the economic risks via higher inflation or weak growth, or for some, both. Oil importer Japan just intervened to prop up a yen that has been weakened by the conflict. A new month is now underway, and some traders will be mindful of that old adage, sell in May and go away. As the U.S. economy grapples with fallout from the Middle East war, Wall Street's radar turns to Friday's April monthly payrolls report. The U.S. economy likely created 73,000 new jobs, economists pulled by Reuters' forecast. In March, payrolls increased by 178,000, the most since December 2024, but that followed a sharp decline in February. The U.S. employment data comes amid signs of hawkishness at the Federal Reserve, as Donald Trump's pick, Kevin Warsh, prepares to take over his chair, with the U.S. president keen on rate cuts. Thursday's local elections in Britain, usually a non-event for investors, could move markets in a big way, with opinion polls pointing to a heavy defeat for Prime Minister Keir Starmer's Labour Party. A heavy defeat could spark more widespread demands for his dismissal among his own lawmakers, and stoke expectations of a successor more willing to run looser budgets. That would bring more bad news for British bonds. It's a big week for European earnings, with Shell and Commerzbank among those reporting. On aggregate, profits are expected to grow 3.2% in Q1, according to LSEG IBES. Under the surface, it's a little bit more complicated. Growth is expected to be driven by just three sectors: financials, tech, and energy. The latter is seen as the biggest beneficiary of the Iran war due to higher oil and gas prices. But if the war and energy surge persist, the overall outlook for Europe's earnings could turn.
His first annual meeting on Saturday, looking to earn the trust of shareholders at a critical moment for the conglomerate built by Warren Buffett. The 63-year-old, who succeeded Buffett in January, kicked off the Omaha event as a banner honoring Buffett's 60 years at the helm drew applause. Buffett, now chairman, watched from the front row. Abel's task, as one attendee put it, is formidable: replacing the greatest investor who ever lived. Since Buffett, who's 95, announced last year he would step down, Berkshire shares have lagged the S&P 500 by nearly 40 percentage points. While Berkshire is sometimes considered a microcosm of the broader U.S. economy, it has also been viewed as out of step with broader market trends, most notably technology and AI-driven growth. Though Apple is one of its largest holdings, Berkshire is more known for its retail, industrial, and insurance businesses, including Geico, BNSF Railroad, Dairy Queen, and See's Candies. Before the meeting, Berkshire reported higher first-quarter operating profit and a record cash pile of nearly $400 billion, along with its first share buybacks in almost 2 years. Still, questions remain over how Abel will deploy all that cash, something that also bedeviled Buffett, with Berkshire going a decade without making a needle-moving acquisition. The meeting is the centerpiece of a weekend of shareholder events around Omaha, including investment conferences, private get-togethers, and shopping from Berkshire-owned businesses in a downtown exhibit hall.
From big tech spending to Prada's boost from the Americas, this is the week in numbers. 63% was how much revenue at Google Cloud grew by in the first quarter, to $20 billion. Overall, Alphabet topped Wall Street estimates for quarterly revenue, as enterprise spending on AI delivered the best quarter of reported growth for its cloud unit yet. The Google parent company's total revenue rose 22% to $109.9 billion. $122 was the price of Brent crude, jumping to a 4-year high. It rose due to concerns the US-Iran war could further escalate and disrupt global oil supply. Reuters energy editor Dmitry Zhdanikov.
The idea that somehow, somewhere, a consumer in the world will be insulated from the impact of this crisis is completely false. Everywhere in the world, in Asia and Europe, even in the United States, which produces a lot of oil of its own, consumers will feel a massive impact.
6% was how much Meta shares fell by. That after it raised its annual capital spending forecast by $10 billion, as it invests heavily in AI infrastructure. The Facebook parent now projects capital expenditure between $125 billion and $145 billion this year. That's even as it grapples with possible losses from a global youth social media backlash. It also warned that legal and regulatory blowback in the EU and the US could impact business. 14% was the unexpected fall in first quarter operating profit at Volkswagen to $2.9 billion. The group said it must overhaul its business as tariffs, geopolitical shocks, and weak car demand hit the auto industry. Around 50,000 jobs are already due to be cut across the group in Germany by 2030. $1.64 billion was the first quarter group revenue at Prada, excluding Versace. It was driven by double-digit sales growth in the Americas, which offset weakness in Europe and the Middle East. Prada acquired Versace last year and is in the process of integrating and relaunching the brand. Versace contributed $167 million to quarterly revenues.
From high oil prices and the conflict in the Middle East to U.S. jobs data and corporate earnings, here's what you need to watch in business and finance in the week ahead. Oil prices briefly topped $120 a barrel this week to hit their highest level since 2022, as the war with Iran enters a third month. While the U.S. and Iran face pressure to end a conflict that has shut the Strait of Hormuz, the world watches anxiously as the biggest ever disruption to energy supplies unfolds. For each week the strait is closed, keeping oil elevated, the greater the economic risks via higher inflation or weak growth, or for some, both. Oil importer Japan just intervened to prop up a yen that has been weakened by the conflict. A new month is now underway, and some traders will be mindful of that old adage, sell in May and go away. As the U.S. economy grapples with fallout from the Middle East war, Wall Street's radar turns to Friday's April monthly payrolls report. The U.S. economy likely created 73,000 new jobs, economists pulled by Reuters' forecast. In March, payrolls increased by 178,000, the most since December 2024, but that followed a sharp decline in February. The U.S. employment data comes amid signs of hawkishness at the Federal Reserve as Donald Trump's pick, Kevin Warsh, prepares to take over his chair, with the U.S. president keen on rate cuts. Thursday's local elections in Britain, usually a non-event for investors, could move markets in a big way, with opinion polls pointing to a heavy defeat for Prime Minister Keir Starmer's Labour Party. A heavy defeat could spark more widespread demands for his dismissal among his own lawmakers, and stoke expectations of a successor more willing to run looser budgets. That would bring more bad news for British bonds. It's a big week for European earnings, with Shell and Commerzbank among those reporting. On aggregate, profits are expected to grow 3.2% in Q1, according to LSEG IBES. Under the surface, it's a little bit more complicated. Growth is expected to be driven by just three sectors: financials, tech, and energy. The latter is seen as the biggest beneficiary of the Iran war due to higher oil and gas prices. But if the war and energy surge persist, the overall outlook for Europe's earnings could turn.
$2.5 billion bailout. I am in continual contact, and my team is in contact with all the CEOs of the airlines. I would say that at this point, I don't think it's necessary. They do have access to cash. If they want to come to the U.S. government, we would be a lender of last resort. If they can find dollars in the private markets, I think that's better for them. But in the end, I think after today, we are going to see a stronger competitive market in our airline industry. And we're going to continue to look at pricing. We're going to continue to look at our energy supply, our jet fuel supply, and as we look forward, we're going to try to make the best decisions.
With a doubling of jet fuel prices in 2 months, the collapse of the carrier is a blow to President Donald Trump, who had proposed $500 million to save Spirit.
If we could do it, we'd do it, but only if it's a good deal.
Spirit accounted for 5% of US flights at one point and helped keep fares competitive among other carriers. A statement from the airline said despite the company's efforts, the recent material increase in oil prices and other pressures on the business have significantly impacted Spirit's financial outlook. Global carriers are contending with surging jet fuel prices since the US-Israeli strikes on Iran disrupted traffic through the Strait of Hormuz. Jet fuel accounts for about a quarter of airlines' operating expenses, exposing weaker airlines. Spirit had affordable fares for budget travellers who didn't need checked bags or seat assignments, but demand tapered after the pandemic when passengers wanted more comfort. US Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy said action is being taken to bring relief to Spirit's workforce and customers.
Even American and United have drafted or crafted microsites for Spirit employees to potentially jump the queue, and get preferential treatment in the application process for the many airlines that are now hiring, whether it's pilots, flight attendants, baggage workers, or even those who've worked in the call centers.
Spirit's shutdown will benefit its rivals. After the announcement, major US carriers rolled out reduced fare options for affected passengers.
Trump has pocketed at least $1.4 billion. This is all in his first year. This is an astonishing level, unprecedented level of corruption. $23 million in licensing deals for overseas real estate projects, a new hotel in Oman, a new golf course in Saudi Arabia, just to name a couple. $28 million from Amazon for a documentary about Melania Trump. $90 million from various other technology and entertainment companies like X and Paramount in the form of legal settlements. When Trump goes to battle with these corporations, it is leverage and conflict of interest at its worst. Then, of course, there's a $400 million jet from the government of Qatar, which Trump has said he plans to take with him when he leaves office. And then more than $850 million from his crypto coin schemes. People who hope to influence federal policy, including foreigners, can buy his family coins now, effectively transferring money to the Trumps, and the deals are often in secret. And this is just the first year of his second term. He still has 3 more years to go to rack up even more grift off of the American taxpayer. 1 year ago,
Donald Trump swore an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States and to serve the American people. But Donald Trump doesn't care about the Constitution. Clearly, Donald Trump is selling you out while he lines his own pockets.
The 20-year-old says he needs to save money as costs soared following the war in Iran. In the past month and a half, he says the price of diesel has nearly doubled.
The situation here is extremely difficult, and today we already need to accumulate fuel reserves specifically for the 2026 harvest, because it's not enough just to grow the crop. It still has to be harvested. If we cannot bring it in, that will lead to a total collapse.
Despite a 4-year war since Russia's full-scale invasion in 2022, Ukraine is still a major producer of grain, oilseeds and vegetable oils. According to Economy Ministry data, it exports to 150 countries. But Dmitry Skorniakov, CEO of agricultural company Harvest, says average production costs will likely increase 20 to 30% in the short term.
This will be a second 2022, when all commodities skyrocketed. Therefore, in Ukraine, for some it will mean bankruptcy and ruin. Those who didn't manage to stock up now, or rather before the new year. And it will be bad for the country too, because the country collects a lot of taxes from agribusiness, and exports are also largely agricultural.
At the same time, a risk for Ukraine is that the war in the Middle East increases Russia's economic advantage. As a major oil and gas producer, it stands to gain from high energy prices. Russian strikes have destroyed Ukraine's refineries, so Kyiv has to import diesel from Europe to run farm machinery. International oil prices are volatile, but analysts say it will take months for supplies to recover from the current disruption, even if a fragile ceasefire between the US and Iran holds. Skorniakov forecasts a 5 to 10% drop in Ukraine's farm output this season, but higher food prices could help maintain the value of Ukraine's exports in the longer term. The government, meanwhile, predicts a stable harvest and is trying to support farmers by selling cheap fuel via state oil company Ukrainafta.
A shaky truce has been struck in the Middle East, but will the war hang over the US economy? This is Macro Matters, and we're talking about the fallout from the war in the Middle East. Oil prices tumbled on Wednesday after the US and Iran announced a 2-week truce, but with ships still not able to carry oil out of the Gulf, that didn't last for long. In the US, the average price of gas at the pump has gone over $4 a gallon for the first time in more than 3 years. That won't really feed through to inflation until we have March's data, but February's numbers showed today that it was already on the rise. Well, Gregory Dacko is chief economist at EY Parthenon. Gregory, even if the conflict does come to an end, which is of course a big if, are higher gas prices to be expected now potentially for months?
Yeah, I think we are going to be in an environment where the effects of the Middle East conflict are going to be felt by U.S. consumers for the foreseeable future. We are going to be in an environment where the salience of gas prices is not just going to weigh on wallets, but also on optimism and morale for U.S. consumers, and we're already seeing inflation rise towards 3%, which is away from the Fed's 2% target. So there is further pain, unfortunately, to be seen on the consumer front.
So how severely might that cut into demand and the wider economy?
Yeah, we're anticipating that if there is a bit of an easing in oil prices through the rest of the year, that inflation will rise towards 4% and then ease back towards 3%, where it currently is by year end. So we're going to see this transitory inflation environment, but we have to keep in mind that this is a scenario in which we see an easing of oil prices and commodities prices over the next few months. Should there be a more severe escalation of the conflict, a more prolonged one, then we could see inflation remaining higher for a more persistent period of time, and that would lead to demand destruction in terms of business activity as well as in terms of consumer spending, which would be a big hit to the U.S. economy.
In the last year or so, we've talked a lot about the K-shaped economy in the US, and of course it's people on the lower end of the K who suffer worse from higher gas prices, but the war has also wiped $3.2 trillion off of stock market values in March. So does that mean better off households will suffer too?
Yeah, in general, these types of conflicts and developments on the geopolitical front tend to have an effect on economic activity via various channels. There's, of course, the confidence channel, there's the financial market channel, there is the commodities price channel, And all of these factors affect the way people spend and the way people invest. And so when we think about this particular shock, yes, there is an immediate shock in terms of prices at the pump, but then you have higher inflation via a number of categories of goods and services that are more expensive. But as you note, financial market volatility is a key factor that will influence how higher income individuals, which have been supporting the economy, tend to spend. And so if we are to see this prolonged environment of uncertainty on the policy front, uncertainty on the geopolitical front, and financial market volatility, that will restrain overall economic activity via reduced investment and reduced consumer spending.
What's that likely to mean for the Fed then? The minutes of the last meeting showed some policymakers are starting to think they might need to hike to counter this. Do you think they will?
I think in general the Fed is leaning more hawkish than it was a few months ago. You're seeing that essentially most Fed policymakers are content with adopting a prudent approach in the face of what is a highly uncertain geopolitical environment with the conflict in the Middle East. They're likely to stay on hold for the foreseeable future. And as you noted, there is in the minutes and in Fed Chair Powell's recent statements this idea of a dual-sided statement that would argue for the possibility of Fed rate hikes should inflation prove persistently higher than the 2% target. So I think in the current environment, it's very wise to assume that the Fed will not be changing the Fed funds rate in any direction for the next few months. And unfortunately, the next move may very well be a rate hike should inflation prove to be more persistent and higher than initially anticipated.
Well, Fed funds futures traders do still seem to think there's some chance of a cut this year, but do you think that's just too optimistic?
Well, we still have a cut at the end of the year in December, based on the fact that the labor market momentum is softening more rapidly, I would argue, than what some Fed policymakers have been illustrating. And so as a result of that, we do anticipate the Fed will eventually cut, but not before the very end of the year, and on the basis of more demand destruction from this conflict. We have to contend with this possibility of two mandates moving in opposing direction, where inflation is higher than the 2% target, and unfortunately the unemployment rate is rising. This would make for a very difficult and potentially contentious environment for the Fed when it comes to policymaking, especially with a potential new Fed chair coming in the next few months.
That was Gregory Dacko of EY Parthenon. Don't forget, you can watch more videos on Reuters.com.
All right, so let's hear a little bit on our education, our miseducation. Poor people have been miseducated, with a whole lot of lies and propaganda. So let's take a listen.
Take your children out of these schools, all of them, okay? I cannot stress this enough. Homeschool your children, make it work no matter what. Stop sending them to the universities, okay? There is a real underground. It is a communist underground. It is real. It is 100% real. It is not imagined. And what they want, the one resource that these people want, are your children. Simple thing that you can do, okay? I know it takes a lot of adjustment. I'm waking up and I'm homeschooling my kids. But by the way, it's the most rewarding thing in the world. Also, it just started this week, so it's only been for 2 days, but it's incredible how happy it makes me knowing that I am doing something to buck the trend as we are slipping further into authoritarian rule. I've been pleading with you guys to get your kids out of these schools. I am telling you that something very dark is going on, and I'm going to continue to stress to you that you need to take your children out of school. Homeschool your children. There is something dark that I am perceiving that is happening, not just in public schools, but in private schools as well, okay? Why our kids had to go. We couldn't get basic answers about somebody that had kind of fallen through the cracks and was posting Polish underground symbols. Her parent was posting Polish underground symbols, and I realized something was wrong. Something was off.
Don't know anything about money is because John D. Rockefeller created the education system. And if you'll recall, he said, I want a nation of workers, not a nation of thinkers. So when he created the education system, he made it a one-to-one model. School is the same as a work day at the factory. That's why you go to your 8-hour shift, 7 to 3, 8 to 4, 9 to 5. Only learning things that make you a better employee. Just like basic math, basic reading and writing, his story, how to stay in line, and how to follow orders. Everything that a good employee should know. Totally neglecting things like teamwork, they call that cheating in school, critical thinking, outside the box problem solving, money management, investing, leadership, sales, communication, tax strategy, and the laws that govern you. And anything else that would be useful in the real world. So what we did is we created our own education system where we learn the things that Rockefeller teaches his kids, like estate planning, tax strategy, trust, insurance, annuities, financial literacy, and privatized banking. So if you want to join our community and learn the strategies that we use, comment the word banker and I'll invite you in. The reason that you don't know anything about money is because John D. Rockefeller created the education system. And if you'll recall, he said, I want a nation of workers, not a nation of thinkers. So when he created the education system, he made it a one-to-one model. School is the same as a work day at the factory. That's why you go to your 8-hour shift, 7 to 3, 8 to 4, 9 to 5. Only learning things that make you a better employee. Just like basic math, basic reading and writing, his story, how to stay in line, and how to follow orders. Everything that a good employee should know. Totally neglecting things like teamwork, they call that cheating in school, critical thinking, outside the box problem solving, money management, investing, leadership, sales, communication, tax strategy, and the laws that govern you. And anything else that would be useful in the real world. So what we did is we created our own education system where we learn the things that Rockefeller teaches his kids, like estate planning, tax strategy, trust, insurance, annuities, financial literacy, and privatized banking. So if you want to join our community and learn the strategies that we use, comment the word banker and I'll invite you in. The reason
nobody's teaching black content creators a motherfucking thing. And they got a new cyber Jim Crow system set up. They got a new segregated racism set up for the internet world that can't be challenged in court just yet. Because we still so they deliberately target you because you're a big platform and they seeing how much money you're making off me shadow ban. They target you and every other major black platform that don't fit the category of a Joe Rogan. Well, it's hard for us to fit the category of a Joe Rogan because all of our subjects in the language and the content is not so advertiser friendly because of our language. So for a whole year or 2 years, I'm saying, man, what's taking so long for YouTube to turn ours yellow? They deliberately picking on us. Well, how they beating us? We're not reading the fine print. So then I started reading the fine print. Black content creators, and they do this intentionally, make less than anybody. If you look at the kind of commercials that they put on the black content creators, they pay less. They pay less. They doing this deliberately. Why? We don't understand language and terminology, and we don't understand the algorithm yet. And I'm saying, they got us. We have to do everything right, and then they come up with something new we don't know about to delay it in. So I started watching certain platforms who record me saying the most horrible things in the world, and it's uploaded with commercials on it that day. They be white people. So then the only black person I ever seen do that was Antoine Daniels, but he wouldn't got a program to do it. So I'm saying, nigga, we losing. When I didn't know what I know, I was making $16,000 a month. Never saw 1 million views, and didn't even have 100,000 subscribers. Those were the RPMs and CPMs that was high. They didn't know what category to put me in. But because we got a criminal, a rapper, a pimp, the language is killing us. Nobody.
Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Poor people's news, poor people news. Let me share this that I got off of TikTok. But first, let me read that I got from Google about Canada. Come on now. It says the Canadian federal government does not directly own the primary east-west freight rail infrastructure. Instead, it regulates, while private corporations like Canadian National Railway and Canadian Pacific Kansas City own the vast majority of tracks, including the major coast-to-coast cargo corridors. Okay, so I asked AI on this Google. I Googled and asked that question, what about Canada's ownership with the railroad? And that's what they came back with.
So the United States just asked Canada for a $573 billion railway bailout. Not offered one, asked for one. The most powerful economy in the history of the world. The nation that has spent 2 years imposing tariffs, trade restrictions, sovereignty violations, and sustained economic coercion on its closest ally. Just ask that ally to please restore the freight rail service that American industry depends on to function. Because the North American railway system, it turns out, is Canadian. The trains are Canadian. The tracks are Canadian. The logistics networks that scheduled the movement of American grain, American auto parts, American crude oil, American chemicals, American lumber, and American consumer goods are headquartered in Montreal and Calgary, 2 of the 7 Class I railroads in North America, Canadian National Railway and Canadian Pacific Kansas City, are Canadian-owned, Canadian-operated companies that run extensive networks inside the United States on American soil, carrying American freight, connecting American cities. And when Canada redirected its trade away from the United States toward global markets, the railways followed the trade. The trains that used to run south to Chicago and Detroit and Memphis are running east to Halifax and Montreal and west to Vancouver and Prince Rupert, because that's where the demand is now. And American factories can't get parts. American farmers can't ship grain. American refineries can't receive crude. American retailers can't stock shelves. And the estimated cost of the disruption, the backed up freight, the idle production, the rotting grain, the cascading inefficiency spreading through every sector of the American economy is $573 billion over 3 years. And Canada said no. Not just no. Canada announced a $30 billion east-west rail corridor expansion, a massive infrastructure investment that permanently redirects Canadian freight capacity toward global export ports and away from the American border. The bailout was refused. The infrastructure that would have served American industry is being built in a different direction, and every dollar of concrete poured on the east-west corridor is a dollar of capacity that will never return to north-south service. Warren Buffett, who owns BNSF Railway, one of the largest freight carriers in North America, and who has spent 60 years studying the economics of moving goods by rail, said this is the most predictable infrastructure crisis in American history. And then he explained with the authority of someone who doesn't just study railways but owns one, why you cannot wage economic war on the country that owns your rail network and expect the trains to run on time, and why asking for a bailout from the nation you've been coercing isn't a negotiation strategy. It's a confession. But the line that is being called the most humiliating sentence ever directed at an American president by an allied leader, the line Carney delivered when asked whether Canada would consider Trump's railway stabilization proposal, is 9 words that told the United States something no ally has ever had the leverage or the reason to say you don't get to break it, and then ask us to fix it. When you understand how the North American railway system actually works, and who owns it, how the trade war cascaded into a rail logistics collapse that nobody in Washington modeled, what $573 billion of damage looks like on the ground across every major American industry, why Trump asked for a bailout, and what the request reveals what Canada's building instead of restoring service, what Buffett said about the most basic law of transportation economics, and why American farmers and factory workers in swing states are the ones paying the price, you'll understand why this isn't a logistics disruption. It's the moment the most powerful economy on Earth discovered it can't move its own goods. Hit subscribe because this railway crisis is about to hit American grocery prices, American factory output, and American farm income simultaneously, and every fix goes through Ottawa. To understand how the most powerful economy on Earth ended up asking its neighbor for a railway bailout, you have to understand something that almost nobody, including apparently the people who designed the trade war, knew about how goods actually move in North America. The North American freight railway system is not 3 separate national networks that happen to connect at border crossings. It is a single integrated continental system designed over a century and a half to move goods across the continent, with maximum efficiency and minimum friction. The US-Canada border is not a dividing line in the system. It is a seam in visible and normal operation, seamless in practice, and so thoroughly integrated into the logistics architecture of both nations that most people forgot it was there, including the people who decided to tear it. The revelation that stuns most Americans when they encounter it, and that reportedly stunned the President of the United States when it was explained to him in a briefing, is who owns the system. Canadian National Railway, headquartered in Montreal, operates a rail network that stretches from the Canadian Atlantic coast to the Gulf of Mexico. Its American operations span Illinois, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama, and Tennessee. CN doesn't just carry Canadian, so the United States just asked Canada for a 573.
Wow. All right. See, you poor people, get ready. Hunker down. Stop shopping. Get as much canned goods and backpack your food. Because I'm telling you now, these people in the White House were ignorant. Very dumb, ignorant. Didn't do their research. Run around trying to be a bully and don't know what they're doing. I'm sick of it. My kids need to, terrible. So let me close out with a little bit of entertainment news. Let me close out with entertainment and Africa news. Just the last few minutes on entertainment, celebrity entertainment news. And in Africa.
This stuns me. How did they not know this when they shot the movie?
We have been saying this about the Michael Jackson biopic. We knew that they had to do some reshoots because they had written in a whole scene that mentioned Jordy Chandler.
Right.
And by the terms of the settlement with Jordy Chandler, who was Michael Jackson accuser back in 1993.
1993, and he got a reported $20 million in a settlement. They had NDAs, and the NDA said neither could talk about this. And then they shoot a movie, and they're talking about it.
So
how did they do
some reshoots? What we didn't know until today was how much it cost. There's an accounting report that the estate has to do annually, I believe, that they have to write down, basically report where the money is going.
Because they're essentially trustees for the beneficiaries who are his kids, Michael's kids.
$10 to $15 million for the reshoots because of that blunder.
But how do they make a mistake like that? I mean, these people who were executors were involved in his life when they made the settlement.
Right.
So how did this happen?
Did they skip that part of the script?
Years. Forget.
I know. Wait, did they skip those pages of the script and didn't know that Jordy Chandler was mentioned?
It's so basic. It's like, you know what?
It's because Michael dies, the terms don't apply anymore. I mean, Jordy's still alive.
They wrote it. And you know what I was thinking of? You will remember this. There was something else the estate did. Do you remember when the song "This Is It" came out? And we got this tip.
Gosh.
And I called Paul Anka up and I said, I understand you might be on this song. And he said, what song? What are you talking about? And I said, "This Is It." And he said, yeah, I wrote that with Michael.
Yeah.
And remember, then they were about to release it. And then he called and he got a boatload of money because they never bothered to clear it.
It's weird that they made so much money off Michael's estate if this is how they're running it. I mean, these reshoots cost as much as the original settlement.
Yeah, you know what? It's true. So the report also lists the fact that something that we talked about, that the executors of the estate have turned it into a huge
it's a
money maker.
It's a cash cow.
Making billions of dollars now. And they talk about all their successes with MJ the Musical.
But the interesting thing
they also talk about how much they have been doling out to the kids.
But Paris Jackson hates the movie. And
she hates how much money is going to lawyers.
And hates how much money is going to the lawyers and the executors. So it's not like everything's kumbaya.
So I'm Jacqueline in Atlanta.
Okay, that was TMZ. Those guys on TMZ talking about Michael Jackson's latest movie, which I saw. All right, so now let's get some more entertainment news and celebrity news with the princess. And then I have in the UK, and I got another celebrity. So let's check it out.
Cosby today, March 23rd, 2026. Bill Cosby was sued once again. The lawsuit was entered in 2023. So the lawsuit was 3 years ago. The verdict was today, and it was a civil suit. There's an old white woman who claims Bill Cosby gave her 2 pills, drugged her with 2 white pills, and she was a waitress at a restaurant. She was not a celebrity. She was just a waitress. But she claims Bill Cosby gave her 2 pills. I believe they knocked her out. She alleges sexual assault. The problem with the case, and I don't trivialize violence against women, as I've said before, I don't care if they black, white, red, green, or purple, no man has the right to take advantage of a female. The problem I'm having with this art is it happened 54 years ago in 1972. How can you prove that anybody sexually assaulted someone 54 years ago? What evidence, what DNA, what witnesses, what circumstantial evidence do you have to prove Bill Cosby did this to this waitress 54 years ago? I can't say he didn't. None of us can, because we were not there. Our question is, as it relates to justice, how can you prove that he did this 54 years ago? And then the other question is, from a white privilege standpoint, Art, why did this woman wait 51 years? Because her lawsuit was 3 years ago. So she waited a half a century plus 1. She waited a half a century plus 1 year to file a civil suit when she could have had Bill Cosby locked up and put under a jail back when this happened. Now, I understand trauma. I'm trained in psychology. My doctorate is clinical psychology. I understand. If I'm one of Cosby's lawyers, I would have to ask the woman in question, why did you wait 51 years to file this suit? Now, Art, it also gets even more interesting. Why? Because the same thing New York City did that led to the conviction of Sean Puffy Combs is the same thing that Los Angeles did that led to this successful civil suit being levied against Bill Cosby. What am I talking about? Los Angeles had recently created a window where survivors of sex abuse could sue their perpetrator in civil court for crimes that took place a long time ago. Remember, we talked about this when we talked about Diddy, that New York adult survivors window law that said if you got assaulted sexually by anybody, no matter how long ago, we're going to give you a 1 or 2 year window to bring that civil suit. And I allege that they created that window to take down Sean Combs. And I'm going to allege right now, Art, that Los Angeles created the exact same window to help take down Bill Cosby. The woman won $19.2 to $19.5 million on a civil suit for an alleged crime that took place before I was born. And what makes this even worse, Art, what makes this even worse is FBI Director Kash Patel and Attorney General Pam Bondi then already told the American people that no one is being investigated for the Epstein files. Now, in the Epstein files, Art, you have 300 different millionaires, billionaires, moguls, and powerful men within the global white power structure. 300 of them. It's a who's who of white elites in the world. 300 of them named. Most of them got evidence in the files against them. And the FBI director and his boss, the attorney general, have both said no one is going to be prosecuted. If I'm Bill Cosby, Art, if I'm Bill Cosby, somebody is going to have to explain to me how I'm paying $19 million for an alleged assault against a woman 54 years ago, when you got men who have eaten children, sexually assaulted children, sexually assaulted women, unalived them, trafficked them, abused them, and yet nobody's going to jail for that. Nobody's going to be punished because of the Epstein trial. This is the biggest sex scandal in world history. Nobody's going to jail for it, but I got to pay $19 million because a snow bunny said I abused her 54 years ago. Look at the double standard. Look at the gross miscarriage of justice. And I believe that Sean Combs and Bill Cosby need to somehow come together and do some sort of a civil suit. They might got to squeeze R. Kelly in there somehow, because they, in my opinion, some lawyers should be able to argue some sort of a case that black men, rich black men, they might got to put Russell Simmons in there because they're trying to drag Uncle Russ into the situation. Someone needs to show that there is a pattern of punishing rich black men for crimes that are barely being proven, if proven at all, while white men get off. Look at Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon was accused of crimes worse than Puff. Vince McMahon ain't been to jail yet, Art. He ain't been to jail yet. You know why? Because him and his wife gave Donald Trump a $25 million campaign contribution year before last. And he had more egregious crimes than Puff. And who else? Mike Jeffries, who was arrested the same month Puff was arrested. Mike Jeffries of Abercrombie and Fitch, he has 16 counts against him. 16 count federal indictment. Puffy only had 3. But guess what? They gave Mike Jeffries a $10 million bail, let him go on home, and they locked Puffy up with no bail, claiming Puffy was too dangerous. Well, if Puffy was too dangerous to be free, Mike Jeffries was too dangerous to be free, and we know Vince McMahon was too dangerous to be free. I believe that the black celebrities who are constantly being accused of sexual abuse and assault, they need to come together, because this is clearly showing a double standard between rich black men and rich white men.
Podcast audience, thank you for tuning in. I got to cut this. I got so much news clips to share and all. I don't want it to go over an hour and 15, an hour and 30 minutes. So let me give you this last bit on African news. Then I'm going to have to reserve the rest of my clips for next week. Thank you for tuning in to my Poor People's News. Here go Africa.
Greetings to all Africans around the world. Today is Monday, April 20th, 2026. And welcome once again to United States of Africa TV, the voice of continental sovereignty and truth. My name is Akosua Prempeh, and I am broadcasting from the United States of Africa. Today, we bring you an important and powerful discussion from the leadership of the Alliance of Sahel States, also known as AES, featuring Burkina Faso's President Ibrahim Traoré, speaking on the future of African sovereignty, regional security, economic independence, and the fight against foreign interference. In this exclusive message, President Traoré speaks openly about the priorities of the AES Confederation, including strengthening the joint military force, deepening true regional integration, fighting corruption at borders, and building stronger economic cooperation among Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. He also addresses the issue of foreign interference, especially concerning the European Parliament's comments about former Nigerian President Mohamed Bazoum, making it clear that Africa must no longer accept colonial attitudes from outside powers. The president further explains the urgent need to fight terrorism not only with weapons, but also with ideas, by stopping extremist indoctrination and protecting the minds of young Africans from manipulation by imperial forces and false religious teachings. He also speaks on the rising global energy crisis, the impact of Middle East tensions on Africa's economy, and why AES nations must focus on controlling their own oil, uranium, gold, and natural resources for the benefit of their own people, not for foreign exploitation. This is not just politics. This is about the future of African dignity, independence, and survival. Before we continue, please subscribe to United States of Africa TV. Like this video, leave your comment, and share this message widely across WhatsApp, Telegram, Facebook, and all social media platforms.
Yes, I am sharing. Yes, I am. Oh, Poor People's News, because information is power. What you don't know, you don't know. But if you know something, you can kind of plan for the future. You can plan to go to Poland, and go down underground and do their mines and breathe some of that Poland salt mining air to help cure ailments in your body. Yeah, that's what everybody want to do, run to Poland. But anyway, this is Old School Queenies Couples Podcast. Come back for next week's news, Poor People's News number 15, I think it is. Yeah, on Fridays. Come back every Friday for Poor People's News, Old School Queenies Couples Podcast. Thank you for tuning in.